honor the life and memory, to remember her with gratitude for all the light that she brought into the world. We're here to celebrate Barbara's gentle life and her gentle ways, and to tell her story again and share some memories that we all cherish of her and will always. Each of you comes with your own unique memories of Barbara, for she was not the same person to any two people. You each come with your own special memories of someone who touched your lives with love and friendship in so many different ways. So we come together to remember and to share a bit of what we hold dear about our beloved Barbara and her life. And to Barbara's family, all gathered here, and those that are afar, that are online with us, we walk with you this day as you walk this journey of grief and begin the process of saying goodbye to her in the physical sense, while beginning to cultivate a new relationship with her in the spiritual sense. It is our hope that we can be a beacon of support. We as a church can be a beacon of support for you as time does what it does, and it moves on, even sometimes when we're not ready for it. When our grief tries to just hold us back. You have friends here who knew and loved Barbara dearly, and will miss her smile, her wisdom, and the stories that she would tell. And we know she loved to tell stories. So we pledge to walk this journey with you. I want to invite you to stay around after this service of remembrance for Barbara. We have a wonderful hospitality time provided by one of her favorite places, Marguerite's Cafe, a place many of you here probably dined with her at one time or another. So please do stick around. There's a lot of food, and we have more stories to tell. Thank you for being here. We're going to light a candle now. Within each human being, there is a spark of divine and eternal light, which exists beyond time and truth, and the truth of eternity. So we light this candle to honor the life and light of Barbara. In lighting this candle, we call forth the love and the light of her spirit that touched the lives of so many, including all of you here today. We light this light to signify Barbara's presence with us in this time. I wonder if you'll join me in rising up in body or spirit and singing a beautiful opening hymn, A Sweet, Sweet Spirit. We honor Barbara with these words. Will you join me in our call to service? Gracious is our God who hears our cries. We come here today to cry out, confident in hope that God is listening to us. Loving is our God who comes to us in our grief and our sadness. We come here today to feel God wrap us in loving embrace, to wipe away our tears and assure us that we are not alone. Holy is our God who never lets death have the final word. We come here today to bear witness to the meaning and the mystery of the resurrection in Christ and in us. Transformative is our God who can turn grief into hope and sadness into joy. We come here today to release our grief, to allow ourselves to be transformed, and to begin to find joy in the midst of heartache. Amen. Please be seated.
So our first reading is from Psalm 121, verses 1 from 8, from King James. I will lift up mine eyes unto the hills, from whence cometh my help. My help cometh from the Lord, which made heaven and earth. He will not suffer thy foot to be moved. He that keepeth thee will not slumber. Behold, he that keepeth Israel shall neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is thy keeper. The Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand. The sun shall not smite thee by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord shall preserve thee from all evil. He shall preserve thy soul. The Lord shall preserve thy going out and thy coming in from this time forth and even forevermore.
The next reading is the poem, The Peace of Wild Things by Wendell Berry. When despair for the world grows in me, and I wake in the night at the least surround the sphere of what my life and my children's lives may be, I go and lie down where the wood drake rests in the beauty on the water, and the great heron feeds. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. For a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free.
Such beautiful words. Such beautiful words. Well, again, on behalf of Faith United Church of Christ, my friends, I want to say thank you for coming out to celebrate and remember the life of our beloved Barbara Campbell. And it's a sad day, as we bear a sense of grief, loss, and emptiness, as we recognize and begin to accept the reality that Barbara is physically no longer here with us. And it's also a day of celebrating this time, and that we have the opportunity to come together, to share stories of her life, to honor her life, family, friends, and church members, a whole bunch of church members here, which is wonderful. And we can just talk about what it was about her that made us laugh, or just reflect on the gentleness that she was as a person and how that impacted our lives. So again, thank you for coming out this day. And to the Campbell family here and those again online, please accept our most heartfelt condolences. You are held in this sacred space in prayer by so many. So again, we will walk this journey with you. I want to begin by saying thank you to Jane for writing such a beautiful, informational, and inspiring tribute to your mom for her obituary. It really was wonderful. I learned so much more about her from your words, through your experiences, through your lens, things that she had never shared with me, the countless times that that we were together. If you've not had a chance to read that, please do. It really brings to heart the kind of gentle, inquisitive, driven, very driven, and compassionate person that Barbara was. So please give it a read. And I thought I knew your mom pretty well. I thought I knew Barbara pretty well because she was one of the first people that I got to know when I arrived here in Florida with my family. I remember the first week my family moved down here, and our things were delayed. You know how that goes when you're moving, and they take an extra 3 weeks to deliver all your stuff. And my wife was telling the story to somebody here, and Barbara overheard her say that we didn't have any of our stuff. And before you knew it, that very night, you know where we were? We were around the table at Barbara and George's house in their home at their dining room table, enjoying a home-cooked meal that was $1 million better than all the takeout and the pizza that we were living on for the last week. Compassion, generosity. That was your mom. That was your grandma. That was your aunt. That was your beloved Barbara. Now, going back to that night, my kids still remember that night. I was just asking them this week, and they said, it's been 10 years. And they're like, oh yeah, we remember that night. They didn't want to leave because there was this dollhouse thing that she had in her den. And they did not want to leave, and I think we almost left them there with Barbara for the night, and she would have loved it. I guarantee you, that's the warmth and the hospitality that she possessed. Now, little did I know that first meal would spark kind of a foodie friendship with Barbara and George until he died. And then after with Barbara, as we would just meet and eat and talk. Things she loved to do. In fact, I was thinking about it, all the places that I dined with her over the years. I was naming a few. Marguerite's, of course, our wonderful catered food, was one. Also, Cafe Al Fresco was a favorite of hers. Home Plate Diner by the ball field. Our Place, Kelly's. Anybody remember that old Caddy K's that used to be over on Main Street? She loved the salad bar there. So we dined there. Bobby's Bistro in Clearwater. Pete, we dined with your mom at Palm Pavilion. It's just crazy how many times I sat down for a meal with that special lady. There's several others I'm sure I'm forgetting, but my point is each time I would meet her for lunch and get a chance to be in conversation with her, I always came away with a sense that there was just so much depth to her life. Always one story to share of her amazing life after another, story after story, especially about her beloved England, which I heard about a lot. Like you said in your obituary, Jane, while proud to be an American, mother never abandoned her British roots. She loved to tell stories of her cousins overseas, her acquaintances, and even stories of the difficult and frightening days that she endured when being bombed by the Germans in World War II. I remember her talking about the air raid sirens and the bunkers and just the horror. In fact, we even read Eric Larson's book together. Some of you might have read it, The Splendid and the Vile. We read that together about those dark days in England, and she just brought it alive for me with her memories and her stories in some really detailed ways. She loved to share stories. She loved to share stories, the good ones and, yeah, even the not-so-good ones. Even the not-so-good ones. I'll miss that always, and I know so many of you will as well. But here at the church, right here in this space, or in the back room, or it might have been out here, it was where I really got to know how passionate and compassionate that Barbara Campbell was. For many years, until it just became too hard for her to hear in this big space, she was really active in one of our groups called the Spiritual Study Group. It still meets to this day on Thursday mornings. And I have memories of this humble, soft-spoken lady roaring to life, literally roaring to life when it came to the issues of the day. She held some firm and deep beliefs around issues of justice that were so important to her. And she spoke from the heart, time and again, and from a place of passion about those issues. I always respected and admired her for her conviction and her willingness to boldly proclaim her truths. And she did that. She leaves a true mark on this place, on this church, and the work we do, and she will continue always to be an inspiration. And her passion for the world and its issues didn't really surprise me at all. If I remember, I was preaching a sermon years ago, and it was Easter, and I quoted, I didn't know at the time, a favorite author of hers, C.S. Lewis, a fellow Briton, right? Who wrote the line, "I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." She told me how that quote touched her and described that's how she saw the world, through its lens as well. And she saw the world through a lens of the best of what Christianity had to offer: kindness and humility and patience and compassion and love. And she embodied all of those in her life, and I'm eternally grateful that I got to know her, to spend so much time with her, and to learn from her. Because I learned from her. For I'd like to think I see the world the same way as she did. Barbara taught me, like many of you, a lot about the world, and a lot especially about what it means to be a Christian in this day and age. The poet Lord Alfred Tennyson, another fellow Englishman, once wrote in his poem In Memoriam AHH to a friend, "'Tis better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. 'Tis better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all." I included that line in a sermon one time, and Barbara, ever the listener, she caught it. She came up to me afterwards, and with tears in her eyes, and it wasn't long after she lost George, and said how she held those words close to her heart. They brought her strength, and they gave her a sense of peace. Well, I think we can say, as we mourn the very loss of Barbara today, we can say those same words about her. "'Tis better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all." Hold those words in your hearts when the grief rages. Hold those words in your hearts when the grief rages, when you miss her deeply, when the tears pour down like heavy rain. And think of all the love that she was, and the love that she gave, and the things that you loved most about her. And remember how those words brought her such peace, and trust that they can do the same for you as well. It's better to have loved and lost than to never have loved at all. Compassion, generosity, passion, wisdom, honesty, bold truthfulness, a life fully and well lived. Barbara Campbell, you will be missed. Rest in peace. Amen.
Psalm 23, a favorite psalm of Barbara's and the family. Privileged to share that with you. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures, and he leadeth me beside still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, and thou anointest my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever."
I want to thank all of you for attending here today. In a celebration of Mom's life, and seeing so many of you gathered to honor her would touch her deeply. And I'm going to try to keep my crying to a minimum because I've been doing it a lot, so bear with me. I was thinking it's often said that our parents are often our first teachers, and if that's the case, then our family was blessed to have a wonderful instructor and role model in my mother. The manner in which she led her life with pragmatism and honesty and kindness and love provided valuable lessons that helped us through our lives. I wanted to reflect on a few of those lessons. I would start with saying the importance of faith. My mother was a faithful Christian who steadfastly relied on the Lord every day of her life. She began attending school at age 11 with her parents, not with her parents, but with a friend, a neighbor who took her granddaughter to the Anglican church in the village. And Mom told me it was there, in that ancient sanctuary, that she first encountered Jesus. And from that time forward, a tiny mustard seed of faith would steadily take root and grow in her heart. She said her prayers as a child and started each day as an adult by reading a Bible devotion, a practice she and George would also share. It didn't always stop her from worrying, but her belief in God, her assurance that He would hear and answer her prayers, brought her peace. Mom did have a very joyous upbringing in rural England. As an only child, she spent many times, happy times, with her parents. She went to the cinema with her best friend, Myra, and at the end of the life, Myra was who she called out for. And she played with her favorite cousin, Emlyn, when she would visit family in Wales. And that tranquility was shattered in 1939 with the onset of World War II. Mom was just 11 years old, a young girl who couldn't possibly have understood the dramatic changes beginning to unfold around her. And yet she dutifully obeyed her parents and her teachers as they worked to create a sense of normalcy through those difficult, abnormal years. Mom's storytelling included so many vivid details from this chapter of her life that we often felt we'd been given a front row seat to history. It was with the help of Winston Churchill that the country remained strong in spite of the deprivation families faced. And her childhood friends weathered those difficult years alongside of her, forming bonds that would last a lifetime. They all knew the fear associated with the German air raids. Mother would lay awake at night as the sirens wailed alone in the dark on a cot my grandparents set up for her under the stairwell, deemed the safest place in the house. In that nook, by herself, alongside her dog Jilly, Mom often prayed that her family would survive the night. Afterwards, her beloved father would leave the house to go on civil patrol, surveying the surrounding countryside to determine what damage, if any, had been done. And thankfully, throughout the war, their village was spared. But the war years greatly shaped my mother. She developed stoicism and strength and learned how to face down adversity because that was what was expected of you. But I don't think she ever really overcame the trauma. In her final years, when she didn't feel much like walking, I would tell her how lucky she had been to have had Winston Churchill on her shoulder, whispering words of encouragement, reminding her to keep calm and to carry on. And God love her, she always did. Another one of Mom's strengths was her loyalty. I remember the holidays at our house officially kicked off with Mom writing her annual newsletter, which went out with her Christmas cards promptly the first week of December so that everybody would have a chance to respond. And each card that came back to our house over the month was a cherished reminder of a friend she'd made, either on base or at an elder hostel or at church or back in England. Though the majority of her friends lived many miles away, those relationships never left her heart. And she frequently planned trips to include stays with friends. And George would go, when George came into her life, Mom's friends became George's friends too. My mother embodied the qualities that are valued in friendship: empathy, forgiveness, the ability to listen. She called on the neighbor who was hurting. She brought tea to friends recovering from illness. She cleaned my stove and my chandelier when I moved into my new house. Mom made every effort to be present in the lives of those she cared for. She knew what it meant to show up. She loved fresh flowers, particularly daisies and daffodils, and in the last years, friends sent beautiful bouquets that gladdened her heart, along with many, many cards and visits to the house, even as times got more difficult, and all of that helped to brighten her days. She remained in the prayers of so many people like you here, and that meant so much to her and all of us. Another strength Mom had was never allowing others to define her. In 1970, she filed for divorce from my father after a 14-year marriage and 15 moves as a military wife. She made the decision out of necessity, really, to preserve her sense of sanity and self. It certainly would have been easier to remain married at that time, but she refused to sacrifice her integrity. She was 40 years old with 3 kids under the age of 13. After the divorce, she loaded up our 1964 Volkswagen Beetle in California and drove us all to California with our dog, from California to New Mexico so we could live near my father's family, and 2 years later from New Mexico to Florida so as to be closer to my grandparents. Mother did not shrink from adversity. She hadn't worked since she was 16. She didn't have a college diploma, but her secretarial skills helped her to land a job at the YMCA in Albuquerque, and she persevered. Mom also ignored the broken family narrative that was so prevalent at that time. She recognized that parenting as a whole person was far better than remaining married and broken. She went on to successfully build a new life for herself, and in doing so, taught us the value of living by one's convictions. Later, her involvement with the Presbyterian Church gave her another avenue to act on those convictions. During the 1970s, farm workers lived in abject poverty at many of the groves around Florida, barely receiving a living wage to pick citrus and other seasonal crops. And workers who dared to ask for better living conditions were swiftly evicted and replaced. At that time, Mom was the church secretary at Faith Presbyterian Church in Dunedin, and thanks to the leadership of Minister Fred Webb, our congregation became involved in the migrant ministry, a grassroots effort launched by Cesar Chavez with the United Farm Workers of America. The UFW was fighting to organize migrants and to improve their work conditions. Mom always had a heart for social justice causes, and she believed in advocating for those who had no voice. So she and Fred spoke to congregations across the presbytery, educating them about the workers' plight and discussing ways in which they could help by either supporting supermarket boycotts or making financial contributions to the ministry. Some of those churches had growers in their congregations, so this was a thorny topic, and it hit close to home. But in time, thanks to the UFW's hard-fought efforts, change did come. I remain proud that Faith Presbyterian and our mother contributed to that effort. When she wasn't at work, Mom also had a lot of creative projects going on, and some of that work is back there. She refinished furniture when we were kids, and she would proudly tell you that she never paid more than $100 for any of the furniture that she had in the house, because, in part, they looked really pitiful when she first brought them home and before she worked her magic. She was also a talented needlewoman who did dressmaking, crewel work, quilting, and knitting. In fact, in her 80s and into her early 90s, Mom knitted more than 15 lap blankets for this church, a project that she only surrendered because of her stroke. I know that work gave her a sense of purpose and productivity, as her blankets brought comfort to those in need. Like her strong spirit, Mom's creative energy burned brightly to the end, and it taught us the importance of giving time to one's creative abilities. Of course, we all know how important family was to Mom. She loved being a mother and a grandmother. Those roles were truly central to her life. When we were growing up, she was always available to listen. She welcomed our friends with open arms, and they became family too. And she could be a nudge at times, telling you stuff you really didn't want to hear. But that's what a good parent does. Mom also had a sharp mind and a great vocabulary. She was the one to beat at Scrabble. Another game we used to play as kids was involved after supper. We would pull out the World Book Encyclopedia and quiz her to see if she knew a word or about a historical event, and we seldom could stump her. Of course, it probably helped our age, but nonetheless. We eventually nicknamed her Mother Britannica because she knew everything in our thinking. Once we began having children of our own, Thanksgiving became Mom's favorite holiday because that's when the house filled with laughter and everyone gathered at her table. We kids, along with our families, Jenna and Chris, Evan and Nathan. The stories that were shared in that time filled her heart. When George came along, that he took such pleasure in cooking the turkey and making the stuffing and building the fire pit so that we could huddle around it at night, simply added a new and treasured dimension to the festivities. In fact, finding such a loving partner late in life brought Mother more joy and contentedness than she could have ever hoped for. She had been single for 30 years before she and George married. They connected on many levels, from their love of gardening and history and travel to the importance they placed on their faith and the liberal causes they supported. You would often see them holding hands as they walked through the neighborhood, or anywhere really. They were kind and giving to one another, and their gentle relationship reminded me that love isn't reserved for the young, but rather for the young at heart. Finally, as Mike referenced, if you knew my mother at all, then you likely recognized her love of storytelling. Listening to her many stories about her childhood and the war years and her English and Welsh relatives led me as a writer to value the stories of others. It also shaped my ability to be a good listener because Lord knows Mom loved to talk. At age 88, she wrote her life story in a scrapbook, mining her most treasured memories in hopes that her children, grandchildren, and yes, even great-grandchildren might come to know her long after she was gone. Mom graduated from college at age 50, earning an associate's degree in women's studies at what was then St. Pete JC, and she used her counseling skills to help congregations at the 3 churches she served, listening to members' stories and often giving advice. In truth, people valued Mom's opinion. She was honest and forthright, and her insights were often right on the money. She acted as an elder on several sessions and participated on the ministerial support committee here at Faith. Her example served as a reminder that being able to listen is a gift, for all any of us want is to be heard. In closing, I wish you could have known my mother like my brothers and I did, in the richness of her many seasons. My mother, Barbara Irene Cushway Gray Campbell, was a treasured gift to our family. She also helped many people whom she encountered, and I believe her contributions made this world a better place. She will be missed always, but I am confident that her lessons will live on forever in our actions, in our deeds, and in our hearts. Amen.
Thank you, Jane. That was very well done. My brother and sister, they are what I call right-brained folks. They are artsy, creative, and they understand the English language. Unlike this guy. I'm a left-brain guy. If you need a quadratic equation solved, or if you need a IBM 3900-E configured for optimum processing using a DB2 database, come see me. Nonetheless, I did need to get up here and say a few things, and I wrote down what I wanted to say many times, but I just couldn't get the words right. So I kind of narrowed it down to just a few things. The first one was 200 pages, so thank me for leaving that one back home. Maybe it's my lack of writing skills or the inability to understand the English language, but I think it was something else. You see, a mom is something special to a child. The first true love of a young boy's life. Someone that will be at your side, hopefully well into your adult life. So it's hard to sum up the relationship in a few words. Mom was a strong woman. She raised 3 of us on a thin dime, but we never knew that. We remember things like the vacations we went on, the trip to New York on Amtrak from downtown Clearwater to New York City, the trip to the UK my brother and I took with her, and the trip to Key West, all of us crammed into the Toyota Corolla, with my sister peeling my back as we drove back to Clearwater. I never knew the cost of these trips. It was never considered, but it was pulled off, and we had more fun than kids should be allowed to. She had a heart of gold. Helping others was her way of serving God, and she really enjoyed it. And we learned a lot from her through conversation and observation. She was a beautiful person. I'll miss her every day. I'd like to thank those that supported Mom through her illness after the stroke, especially Donna Lund, who alerted Ian on the day of Mom's stroke, because Donna and Mom had an agreement to touch base every day to make sure everything was okay. And when Donna didn't hear back from Mom, she contacted Ian, who found her on the bathroom floor at her house and got her to the hospital. Donna continuously visited Mom, sent cards, called frequently. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, Pastor Mike, for being there with us throughout. Your kindness and listening skills were certainly needed and a blessing for us. Thank you, Mike. The church membership ministry team for all the thoughtful cards and the checkup calls. Other friends of Mom like Kathy Duche, Joan, Mudge, and so many others. If I missed any, I apologize, but thank you for being there for her. Thank you for my wife, Sue, for putting up with my absence while I tended to Mom's needs over the past year and a half. And thank you for my local longtime friends who helped me take my mind off things while I was here in Clearwater. Ron, who Mom called her third son, Dave, Rob, Beth, and Steve, and Linda, thank you for your friendship. My sister Lee and her husband Butch for checking in on Mom and sending cards and flowers. My cousin Linda and John for checking in on us frequently and sending flowers. We appreciated that. And especially Tom, Jane, and Ian. Without family, this would have been a lot more difficult to get through. I know Mom appreciated the love and care we gave her. On the screen, time out. You see the rose bush, it's in my mom's backyard. I gave it to her years back for Mother's Day, and she transplanted it into this pot. The weekend Mom passed away, I didn't see any buds on it, but don't you know, on Mother's Day, that was Mom saying, I'm okay. Thank you all. God bless.
I didn't really have anything prepared, but, memories come up. Mom always said, talk. When we were, I don't know what age, high school, I think, our church did a thing where we ate on $10 a week. You know, Mom could stretch a meal, like stew every night, probably. But, you know, it was like, it was a lesson. Those with less, you know, got by. And we did that at Faith Church, and then Fred Webb used to get mad because she'd pile us in a Volkswagen and dress us in shabby clothes, and we'd bring this awesome tree home, pay like $15 for it. He's like, guys paid like $40 for mine. Can I bring your kids with me next time? You know, so it became kind of like a running joke. And you know, she just taught you life lessons about, you know, how to help others, and my grandfather too, because he influenced, I think, her, and always helped people and instilled that in me, because I seem to always just, I know sometimes people come to you, and I seem to have to me to, you know, give back. That's what she taught us, you know, to never forget those less fortunate, and you know, those memories will always be there. How she just gave of herself and taught us how to give of ourselves. So you can't have more of a legacy than that. So thanks, Mom.
Are there any other family reflections? Or we go into a time of open reflections? Yeah. Oh, you want to come?
That's okay, I can speak from here.
You know what, we'll go right to the time of open reflections.
Thank you.
I'm Lee Hansen. I'm Lee Hansen, and I'm not, there we go. I'm Lee Hansen, and I'm George's daughter. And Jane, you mentioned the fact that it was sort of a magic occurrence that they found love late in life, and I'll tell you that had it not been for your mom, I know my father would probably not have lasted as long as he did. There was such a joy and a love between them. So thanks.
To you with the microphone. If you could remember just to talk directly into the microphone, it helps our online community.
Hello, I'm Joe Eater, and I met Ian Gray. And I met Ian Gray in high school when we were 18 years old, and me and him were always getting in trouble. Well, I wouldn't say trouble, but we had a lot of fun. I called her Mrs. Gray. She kind of looked at me like I was a little boy who was trying to grow up, which was kind of comical, you know, in a way. But I loved her. She was a sweetheart. The Gray family has been always my rock, and have always helped me all the time, as far as my buddy Ian's always there when I need him. Especially when my car broke down twice, Ian was there. So I've lost my mother too, and I understand the losses. There's this, you can't describe it, as such a pain, and it doesn't go away. And I say, I guess you just adjust to it. You never get over it. And the best thing that I've always found is talking about it to people that want to listen and can understand where the empathy is coming from. So I'm honored to know these people in my life. They've always been there. Ian's relatives are awesome, and I've been always welcomed over there, and I've always honored to know these people. And you don't see every day where somebody will help you when you call them and you need them. They usually make excuses. My own brother that I loved wouldn't even help me out at that time that we were stranded, but Ian was there, I believe, twice. He's always there when I need him, and I'm the same way. So all I can say is to the Gray family is you've got each other, you've got your strength, and you got your love, and you got your understanding. And one day, maybe somebody else will go through a tragedy like that, and you'll be able to help them. Because we're all here to help each other. That's what God wants us to do. And we have to learn that and remember that, because there's a lot of people in this world just for themselves. So saying this, God's very important to me, and I love him very much, and I love Jesus Christ very much. And we all do. And we all try to be a better person than we ought to be sometimes. But what I'm trying to say is that I'm honored to be here, and my sympathy and love goes out to the Gray family. And I call her Mrs. Gray. She was just an awesome woman. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Lisbeth Cohn, and Barbara and I had 3 great loves together. One was food, as with Mike. Cooking is my hobby, so I invited myself to her home for lunch, and I brought lunch. She made the tea and the little desserts, but I brought the lunch. And we sat out in the back, and she shared so many stories with me. I mean, everything is just so in place with everything I've heard today. The other thing that was very important to me in this church was we put together a mental health program called Life is Life. And we met weekly or every other week, and people who were struggling would come to the meeting and share what was going on, and the rest of us would hold them up in prayer and in support. And Barb often shared her time, her war stories, and it was difficult to say anything to comfort her, but she wanted to be heard. And yet, when other people spoke about their issues, she had wonderful answers. She had such wisdom to give them and held them up beautifully, even though many of them were much younger than she was or I was. And she was always there for us. And probably my favorite remembrance of her was during the quarantine. I was single, I was home alone, and I spent my time drawing little pictures that were 2 inches by 4 inches and mailing them out to church members just to let them know that I was there, I was thinking of them. She received one of these pictures and she called me to see if I was okay. And she couldn't hear anything I said, so she just said, "Lisbeth, just listen to what I have to say. You don't have to respond." And so she told me how dear I was to her and what great work we did in mental health. And I've carried that with me through 2 very difficult years. Although we didn't speak often because I couldn't go out and she couldn't hear me on the phone, I sent cards and we kept in touch through our joyful memories and our thoughts. And for that, I will be forever grateful. You guys are blessed to have such a wonderful mom. Thanks.
Okay, are you ready? I had the distinct privilege of living 2 doors down from Jane and Peter and Ian. And my brothers played with you guys when you're growing up because I had 2 brothers and Jane had 2 brothers. But I noticed when they moved into our neighborhood because, first of all, Barbara was about the same size as my mother, just tiny little thing. But then I saw Jane walking in the house with a guitar, and I thought, okay, I've got to be there. So, but I had no idea exactly when that would take place. And just a few short months before I went over to Jane's house, my family suffered a tragedy, and we lost our oldest child. But I did not really want to talk about that or tell anybody. And but I just felt drawn to go down to Jane's house because we'd started playing the guitar together. And she's a lot better than me. Anyway, I just was welcomed in. I mean, I walked in the house, and as soon as we sat down, your mom tried to feed me along with everybody else. And it was a wonderful time. There was so much conversation, and there was so much joy. And we didn't have a lot of that in my house right then. And because my parents are going through something more difficult than they could possibly talk about with my brothers and I. But it was a godsend to go down and hear all the positivity and all the laughter and permission to be yourself at Jane's house via Barbara. And I just thought, this is a lot what I want my family to look like when I grow up. I want that type of acceptance. You can say what you feel. You can even feel on top of that. And just in a shoot, just very shortly after that, summertime hit, and it was like beach. The beach. That's what we live our lives around here, right? The beach. So Jane and I went to the beach every single day, and I was, I'm a little bit older than Jane, not by much, just a couple of years, but you don't know. Your mother would take me aside and she would say, "You're the responsible one here, right, Jill?" And I would say, "Yes, yes, ma'am, I am the responsible one here." We were so responsible. We took our clothes in the car and changed into the smallest bathing suits we could possibly buy in my car. And we met boys every day, charming boys, wonderful boys. And among those boys that we met was one named Tom Schneider. And he was really awesome. And it was like, we brought him home one night to Jane's house because we didn't dare to take these people in my house. So we brought him home, and your mother said to me when you were not looking, she goes, "How old is he exactly?" And I said, "Probably close to our age." And he wasn't really, and maybe 4 or 5 years older than we were. And every day we would leave, and my mother would say, "Where are you going?" And I would say, "Well, Jane and I are just going out for a bike ride." She goes, you're not going over to this boy's apartment, are you?" And I would say, "I got to go, right? We're going right now. We're, you just sort of leave." And I think your mom had a sense of just how gifted and what a gentleman Tom was in every way, I might add. And it just added to probably the most fun summer I've ever had in my entire life. But making up different stories to tell our parents, creative, not lies, just not lies, really just creative stories, and a lot of guitar playing and great memories, and that's what I wanted my home to be like. And, your mother was very accepting of that, and I appreciated that a lot. Great memories.
I'm Linda. We used to call her Auntie Barb. I'm Auntie Barb's niece from New Mexico. A couple of stories. This one I heard before I knew what it meant. So she was always willing to laugh at herself too. Not just to be joyous with others, but to laugh at herself. Here was the joke. In England, they used to knock you up in the morning. They'd take a knocker and knock at your window. Well, she was sitting at a table with her husband, who's in the military, all these highfalutin people, and she says to one of the people, "Well, shall we knock you up in the morning?" "Well, if you're American, no." So she would tell, my parents told me the story after, but she would tell that story, they said, and she laughed harder than anybody. She thought it was the funniest thing. So that's just her wonderful sense of humor, but she would laugh at herself. The other part, just recently, Pete called me on a video call, and she says, "Linda, what is all that white stuff on the top of your head?" Which Pete very graciously said, "Mom, we're in our 50s now." So she, always honest though, she didn't always have a great filter. We all can deal with that, right? But she handled herself graciously. She always, came back and said, "Well, it looks really great on you." It wasn't a bad thing. She just noticed that, oh my gosh, So I guess in her mind, I was probably always that little girl, So we will miss her greatly.
I'm going to sit. Okay. I'm Rosemary Randall, a member of this church, and I've known Barb for about 7 years since I've been coming here. And I was in quite a few small groups with her, the Life is Life, the Faithfully Aging, the Spiritual Studies, and I heard and was amazed at so many of the wisdom words she shared with us in those groups. And things that, well, yeah, I'm getting up in age too, but she's about 14 years older than I was, or I am. But she always had an understanding of the modern world, let's say. And she knew what life was like in these times, as well as the times that she grew up. She understood things from an amazing perspective. I even remember one time when I was sharing something about Hillary Clinton in one of the groups, and she said, "Oh, I felt that way too." I mean, it was, I don't want to share what it was, but she got it. And other people younger than her wouldn't have got it, but she got it. And I just think she's such an amazing person, precious, brilliant. I was so blessed and still am blessed to know her, and I got to know her family. I heard so many of her stories, and they will live on in my heart for a long time. And I know that she fiercely loved her family. And I heard about George, too, marrying him when she was 70 years old and being a single mom all those years, and I can sort of appreciate that from my own life in some ways. But she just had a way of living her life to the fullest, honestly, vibrantly, understanding, and with wisdom, and young at heart, even though she was, like I said, 14 years older than I was. And she still is going to be in my heart for a long time. Thank you all for having such wonderful stories to share of your mom and other friends, because she's come even more alive today. And I thank you very much.
Those are wonderful. Thank you. Hope to kind of help fill out some more experiences for all of you. You're a very special, special lady. Continue our service with a poem read by Wendy Brand called Grief.
This is a poem by Gwen Flowers called Grief. I had my own notion of grief. I thought it was the sad time that followed the death of someone you love, and you had to push through it to get through to the other side. But I'm learning there is no other side. There is no pushing through, but rather there is absorption, adjustment, acceptance. And grief is not something you complete, but rather you endure. Grief is not a task to finish and move on, but an element of yourself, an alteration of your being, a new way of seeing, a new definition of self.
Thank you for that, Ian. What a gift. I wonder if you'll join me in a little moment of centering ourselves in the spirit of prayer, a little deeper sense of prayer. Creating God, we thank you for the gift of life. From our moment of conception and birth to the moment of our last breath, we live amidst the wonder and beauty of all life and marvel at the gift of what it means to be fully human, fully alive. Today we particularly thank you for the gift of Barbara's life, who was a gift to us, to so many others in this world. Loving God, we thank you for the gift of love, for the wonder of human relationships, the ability to know one another and to be known, and to accept one another and be accepted, to live in depth of meaning together. And today we particularly thank you for the love so many knew from Barbara and the love so many could offer her in return. A depth of relationship which makes our grieving that much deeper. Whatever present God, we thank you for the presence at the heart of this moment and each moment. Our hearts are heavy with sorrow and grief today as we say goodbye to Barbara, in the physical sense. And so we lift her in our hearts, and we lift her family to your presence. We pray that Barbara will come alive for them often in the spiritual sense and the memories that they hold dear, and the moments that they are together telling stories of what they miss most about their beloved, or just in the quiet and the stillness while reflecting on her life and all she shared with them. Be with them gently in this time of grief and loss, ever-present spirit, as well as with all who will miss her gentle ways. I wonder if you'll join me in praying the Lord's Prayer together. Please join me. Our Creator, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive those. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Amen. I wonder if you join me in rising up in body or spirit and singing a song that I think would be close to Barbara's heart. And this one's picked up by Jane, so it's a special song. So will you rise up in body or spirit, and we'll join our voices in How Firm a Foundation. Please be seated. No one knows what lies beyond the grave. Some of us believe that there is a life beyond this life, an encounter with the living God. But in his letter to the church at Corinth, Paul says that it is as different from this life as the fully grown plant is from the seed from which it grew. Some of us believe that this life is all that we have, and that we are called to live this life as fully as possible, fully human, fully alive to God's purposes. Whatever we believe about life beyond death, we can all know this. Barbara is at peace. She's at peace with the troubles and the ailments of this world. She's at peace with us in our hearts, and she's at peace with God. Barbara's atoms have re-entered the great cycle of nature and the cosmos, but her spirit will live on in those that she has influenced through her life. So we will remember Barbara not just for the events of her life, for what she did, but we will remember her for the person that she was. A woman of gentleness and fairness, and peace and love. And those qualities will be remembered in our lives for generations to come. I wonder if you'll rise up with me as we commend Barbara. You put a hand up if you'd like. And so we release Barbara this day to penetrate the awesome mystery of the God experience, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, elements to elements, stardust to stardust. And we commend her spirit to those who would choose to be keepers of her memory. Goodbye, dear friend Barbara. You are no longer with us physically, but you are still vitally a part of our lives in spirit. I just want to say, why don't you go ahead and please be seated. As we bring this service and this time of reflecting to a close, I want to invite you to continue to reflect. I thank you for all of you who shared something of your experience with this wonderfully gentle person. I really thank you on behalf of the family, who I think learned some more about how people experienced your beloved Barbara. It just, it's so wonderful to hear the stories, and we can continue to do that. We're going to have a time of hospitality. Marguerite's catered, Barb's favorite, so make sure you grab a big old plate of food, because it sounds like there's a heck of a lot of it out there. And continue to tell the stories about her life and what drew you here. What drew you here today to remember Barbara Gray Campbell? Share that with someone and enjoy a good meal in the process. Before we listen to a beautiful sounds of a Welsh men's choir, I've grown to love this song. I've listened to this countless times, trying to get it downloaded. I love this song. It's become a part of me already. And I think you're all gonna love it as well. It's called "We'll Keep a Welcome." So we'll close with that. But I want to just offer up a benediction. And when the song is over, why don't we kind of filter on out and go and and enjoy a time of hospitality together. But for now, may God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may God bring you a deep sense of peace now and forever. Go in peace after we hear this beautiful, beautiful song. Rest in peace, Barbara. share what she meant to you.